Good morning, it's Jonathan Gray from Casco Manufacturing, that's cascomfg.com, and today we're going to do a quick instructional video for one of our customers. He had an issue where his roll pin sheared off, and this is a very common problem, especially this time of year with our salt sand spreaders, for various different reasons. But we're just going to go through and show you how I would change that roll pin, and if that doesn't work, we're going to show you an additional option for changing that out. So stick with us. We're going to show you the parts, we're going to show you the tools, and we're going to show you the technique, and hopefully we can help you get this done. All right, so I'm going to do some step-by-step, very simple explaining here, and this might be over-explaining to some of you, but some of you are going to think it's under-explaining. But I'm going to break it down as much Barney style as possible so everybody can get as much as they need out of this video. So this is your roll pin. It holds your fan to your shaft on your gearbox. On your gearbox, there is this long shaft coming out the top which your fan attaches to. There are two holes on this shaft. The top hole is for attaching your agitator. You may have a salt sand agitator like this, or you may have the regular C agitator, which is smaller and looks more like this bottom portion here. Your bottom hole here is for attaching this fan blade, or this fan with fan blades. And that is where we're going to be driving our roll pin into. All right. As you can see, we've already had one driven into here, and it holds nice and firm, and it's going to do its job. Now, there are some common reasons why the roll pin itself would shear off. For instance, you may leave your salt and sand inside of the unit overnight. It's compacted down, it freezes, you go to run it in the morning, lickety-blam, you break this thing in half. Another reason might be you have a very old unit. You've used it for a long time. It's corroded over time. It's rusted over time. That shear pin, or that roll pin, shears right off when you go to use it. Another very common mistake people make is they do not open the seat gate before they go to run the unit, and that salt and sand agitator will suck everything down to the bottom of the unit, compact it down, causing way too much pressure and torsion on the unit, on the components themselves. And instead of breaking the rest of the components, the roll pin itself will snap, and that's by design. We want this little cheap part to break. We don't want these expensive parts to break. So I just wanted to explain that to you and hopefully help avoid this ever happening to you. But if it has, and if you're watching this, it probably did, I hope this video is helpful for you. All right, to get this job done, you're going to need a couple things. First, you're going to need a mallet or sledge with a little bit of heft to it. You're going to need a light ball peen hammer. You're going to need a punch of some sort. Now, I typically use these, this big nail situation that we filed down. I find it to be a little bit easier because it's got a little bit more length on it, and the front of it is tapered down to where I could get into the hole just right, and I'll show you that here in a minute. If you don't have either one of those, a 5/16 by 2 3/4 bolt actually works. And that's going to help you drive in and drive out these cold pins. Now, if you go to your owner's manual to find your cold pin, if you need to order one, it is number 5, and it is 5/16 by 2 inch spring pin. Okay. Now, what you're also going to need is a big long bar of some sorts, and you're going to understand why here in a moment. Now, we were going to do this instructional video on a new unit, but we figured it'd be more realistic to show you on a used unit. This is one of our personal units. It was used for fertilizer, and somebody forgot to wash it out, so the fertilizer stayed on bare metal, rusted it all to crap, but we're still going to be able to work on it. It's going to be a little bit of a process, and I'm going to try to show you how to do this without completely disassembling to get that roll pin in. And I'm going to try to show you how to do it as safely as possible so you're not injuring yourself in your shop. Now, to get access to the actual gearbox shaft and fan itself, you can do one of two things. Either raise it up if you have a forklift or your 3-point hitch, get it up to height so you can get down in it. I guess there's 3 ways. You can lay on your side and try to work on it, which I wouldn't suggest. That's going to be a real pain. Or 3, what I would do is tip it over on its side. And you can do this by yourself or with a friend. I would suggest having some help with you just in case. Now, if like me, you're going to work on it with it laid on its side, What you're going to want to do is push it towards the herd sticker and not towards the handle so you don't accidentally damage your handle. So we're going to push it my direction. I'm going to catch it. Come on over. We're going to just let it fall easy. All right, so we did find it easier to flip it up on its side like this with the herd sticker facing out. It gave us a little bit more room to work in here and actually drive that pin all the way in. With it laid on the herd sticker itself, it was just too much of a pain swinging this away without enough space for an actual swing or even holding your punch. So when you go to try this, I would suggest rolling it up on its side like this. It'll be a much easier process for you. Now, in a perfect world, when you're going to replace this roll pin, the hole on your shaft from your gearbox and your fan are going to be aligned. But the world isn't perfect. Most likely those holes are going to be misaligned, making it impossible for you to drive that roll pin through. So there's a couple different ways that you go about getting those holes aligned. The easiest way would be to try to work on it in this position. The hardest way is going to be disassembling and reassembling, which we're going to show you as well. But in order to do it this way, I think I have a pretty good system here. So come on over here. Now to get that fan, or to get the shaft to sit still and move the fan around the shaft, we have took in a piece of wood here and shoved it against the agitator. So the agitator cannot spin freely. The agitator is still attached to the shaft, so that's going to hold the shaft still. Then we're going to go on the opposite side here and use this piece of bar and this hefty little sledge, and we're going to knock that fan until we get those holes aligned. Like so. All right, so after using that bar and sledge, we were able to get this fan to move around the shaft just enough to where those holes are nearly aligned. Now you can tinker with it enough to get them perfectly aligned to drive your pin through, but like I showed you earlier, I like to use my handy dandy giant nail with the tapered end on it to help me get those aligned a little bit easier. Drive it in until the sound changes. You know those holes are aligned. Now, after you've gotten your holes aligned on the shaft, your gearbox shaft, and your fan, you're going to need to actually do the rest of the job. You're going to drive your rolled pin in through the other side. Now, it's going to be a little difficult with it like this, but like I said, if you didn't want to go through the trouble of disassembling, this is the best way you're going to have to go about it. So you're going to have to get a finger down in there. Try to get it seated the best you can. All right, now that you've got your roll pin seated, it took me a little bit of doing. It's not going to be the easiest thing to do in the world, and I actually switched from this pin punch to this more pointed-ended pin punch. And seating that in there, I was able to get my ball peen hammer, a couple whacks just to get it set right, and then I'm going to take this larger punch and drive it the rest of the way home. You might have to find a couple different angles to get the job done. This is a tight spot, but this is going to be, I'd imagine, a lot easier on you than disassembling the entire thing. So hopefully you're able to find the right angle, get that sucker driven in. I'm going to do my best here. Now, since you have it laid over on its side like this, there's not a lot of room to work. So you're going to need something a little bit longer, a punch or something like it that you can get on the end of that roll pin with and hammer her home. That's really the only way you're going to be able to do this without disassembling and reassembling. So I've got it seated in there. I got a longer punch to give me a little bit more angle with the hammer. And she should sit right in for you. So that concludes how to replace the roll pin on a fully assembled unit. rolling it over onto its side, finding the right angle to drive that pin in. It takes a little bit of doing, but I think it is simpler than disassembling the unit, which I'm going to show you next. I think it's important to note that I build these units. I don't regularly repair them. Matter of fact, this is the first time I've ever replaced a roll pin. We get calls about it a lot, and I can walk people through on how I would do it, but I've never personally done it myself, and so that was a really nice learning experience to see what the customer goes through. It'll help me help you better in the future. But if you are unable, or it seems too difficult to replace the roll pin on a fully assembled unit, up next here, if you stay tuned, I'm going to show you how to disassemble the unit so you can get that entire base out and onto a bench and work on it there. Now, if you didn't want to go through this whole process of, kind of rolling the sucker around, blocking up the agitator, and driving that pin home with this all still attached, we're going to show you how to disassemble and reassemble this. You might find it a little bit easier to replace that roll pin up on a workbench. So we're going to show you how to do that next. Now, the original plan was to take one of our freshly built brand new units, but we wanted to kind of show you something closer to reality. This is one of our personal units. Clearly, we've had it for a while. Clearly, we use it a lot. It's going to have the rust. It's going to have the corrosion. It's going to have the problems that you're going to run into. And so we're going to show you how to bypass those problems and get the job done. Now, when you're working on a unit that has been used as often as this guy here is, you're going to have a lot of rust. It's just part and parcel for working with outdoor equipment. PB Blaster is going to be your best friend here, or some sort of penetrating oil. You're going to want to go ahead and just spray down every bolt and nut that you're going to be working on just to make this job a little easier. Do a little prep work, spray everything down, let it sit for a minute, and then get back to work. Now, to do this job, you're going to need a couple different tools. First, you're going to need a 3/4 inch socket, a 9/16, a half, and a 3/8. Your 3/4 inch is going to be utilized to remove the Z-bar, which is the mounting bar for the gearbox itself to the frame. You will find that will help you remove this bolt. Your 3/4 inch will also be used on this lower L for removing the base plate from the frame. Your 9/16 is going to be used for this 3/8 bolt, 3/8 by 1. It'll have a lock washer on each one. There'll be 2 per Z-bar. And the Z-bar, like I said, holds the gearbox to the frame. Your 3/8 is going to be used for removing the deflector shield. You will have 2 self-tapping bolts here, screws, however you'd like to say it, and your 3/8 are going to remove those for you. You're also going to need, we use this big long hook, but a long screwdriver of some sorts will help as well, and that is for removing the spring handle, and I'll show you that here in a minute, or the handle spring. All right, so our first step is going to be removing this handle spring, and the reason why you're going to do that is because you're going to disengage this handle here by removing this bolt, but if you do that without removing this spring, that handle is either going to smack your unit or smack your shin. You don't want that to happen. So step number 1, you can use a handy dandy hook like I have, or if you're at home and all you have is a big handled screwdriver or a long screwdriver, you can shove that down in there just to add a little back tension for when you release this bolt, it doesn't go flying off somewheres. There we go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now hold on to your parts too. Now in our tools list, I didn't mention 2 things. One, when you're using your half to remove this bolt here, you're going to want it to be a deep socket. That bolt obstructs the shorter sockets, so you're going to want a deep socket to do that. And then also added in there, you're going to want a half wrench. and that's to hold your underside. Get your nut so you can get to the bolt. Now you should hold on to all your parts. Some of them are going to go falling around. Okay, your next step is removing these 1/2-inch bolts to detach the Z-bars from the frame. Now, use what you have. We're going to use an impact, but if you're at home, a wrench is going to do just fine. A ratchet wrench would be even better, but use what you have. All right, your next step is you're going to take your 9/16 socket and you're going to remove these 3/8 by 1 bolts holding the Z-bars to the gearbox itself. There we go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. She's off. Now just do it 3 more times. For this next step, you're going to need a 3/4 wrench. You can use a regular wrench. I'm going to use a ratchet wrench. It makes the job a lot easier, but if you have a regular wrench, you can get the job done as well. You have a 1/2-inch bolt holding your upper and lower, or your lower and upper, whichever, L clamps together, which holds the base of your unit to the frame. Now it takes a little bit of doing. This is a real forearm workout. I built a lot of these, so my forearms are pretty tough, but you're gonna have to do this 4 times. Just go around, pull them all out, and that will release your gearbox fan and base from the frame itself. For this next step, we're going to remove the deflector shield. That's going to require your 3/8 socket. It's not going to be completely necessary, but it will make it a lot easier for you to move your gearbox fan and base out of the frame. Now this next part, it takes some doing, it takes some wiggling, especially if you have your PTO still attached to your gearbox. It's going to be even more difficult if you have your salt sand agitator attached. It's longer, and the hole here isn't that wide. So you're going to want to position yourself right and pick up and slide it back and underneath. You're going to need a vise or some way to hold the gearbox steady. And you are going to need a way to hold the shaft coming from the gearbox still. You're attempting to move the fan around the shaft because your roll pin has sheared off. If there's bits of roll pin still there, try to remove them. Well, definitely remove them so you can get this job done. And then you're going to hold this agitator still, and you're going to use a ball peen hammer or a small sledge to knock this fan in a circle until you see that the holes align enough for you to draw your or to drive your roll pin in. Okay, so I've showed you how to completely disassemble your 750, and now I'm going to show you how to put it back together. So stay tuned. If you have any problems with this process, please feel free to contact us. Action. Alright, so we've got it completely disassembled. You have been shown how to replace the roll pin in the shaft of your gearbox. Hopefully that was clear enough for you. If not, feel free to contact us and we'll walk you through whatever steps you need to walk through on. It's not a big problem at all. Now I'm going to show you how to put it back together properly. The number one thing you need to remember when putting your base plate back into your frame is that your base plate needs to be lined up correctly on your frame. Now the way that we do that is we have an indicator weld. It's kind of wore off in this old unit. It's not functional weld, it's just an indicator weld that we put up on the side here. And that aligns with a painted line we put on the base plate. If the base plate's painted line has worn off due to age or whatever, there are numbers along the bottom of the base plate here. And you are trying to line that indicator weld with the number 6. As long as you do that, you'll be fine. The other important thing to remember is that there needs to be proper spacing between your fan and your base plate. The way we accomplish that is with these spacers here. Now these spacers are 2 1/4 inch long. At home, obviously you're not going to have these, so a small block of wood of the same size is going to do the trick. And what we do here is we put a pry bar up underneath, lift it to height, and set it back down. And I do the same thing to the other side. Throw a bar, or pry bar in, lift it to height, set it back down. Alright, once you've got your base plate, your fan, your gearbox, all back into the frame, you've reattached your lower L, you reattach the Z-bars to the gearbox and the Z-bars to the frame itself. Your next step is going to be working on your reattaching your handle spring, and getting that all situated. So come on over. All right, your first step to reattaching the handle assembly is going to be your seat gate to the handle itself. Now you're going to have 2 washers, a lock nut, and a 5/16 by 1. And those washers are going to sandwich these 2 together. So it goes bolt, washer, washer, nut. And when you tighten this down, you don't want to make it so tight that it does not move on your seat gate, but you don't want it so loose that it's just rattling around in there. So it's kind of a little fine line. You'll find it. See how it still spins freely, but it's not rattly? That's what we're looking for. After that, we're going to move on to reattaching the spring to the frame. All right, after you've reattached the seat gate to the handle, now you're going to be coming over and reattaching your spring to the frame using this eye bolt and this bracket that is welded to your frame. Now, we use this handy dandy hook that you've seen me use already a few times in this video, but as I've said before, you can use a long handled screwdriver and use that to pull against your spring, get your bolt through your hole, and get your nut on the other side. Well, shucks. That boy is rusty. Alright, you have your roll pin installed, you have your unit put all the way back together. I hope this video was helpful for you. Like I said before, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to contact us either through one of our social media outlets or call us by phone.